Welcome to InFocus Recouched with Kent and Dora. Today we're going to explore some pretty dark topics, but you're going to be surprised because it's going to be a little fun.
A lot of fun, I reckon. Ancient tombs, eternally burning hell. And this first interview with Beth Barrett is incredibly moving, I think, because she spent all these years battling mental illness, but she's still so positive. Let's check it out.
Beth has just written a book called How I Survived the Depression Thing. Beth, I noticed in the title of your book it says How I Survived the Depression Thing, not How I Survived the Depression Thing. What do you mean by that?
Thank you, James. I appreciate you noticing that because a lot of people make the mistake of saying how I survived. It's not past tense for me, it's an ongoing thing, very much so.
When did you first realize that you were suffering from depression?
Okay, well, I had one son and then 2 years later had another son, and after he was born, that's Luke, I was diagnosed with postnatal depression. And
we think of postnatal depression as being something that you have, right after the birth of a child, but the depression that you had didn't just go away of its own accord a few months later. This is something that's actually become a lifelong issue.
Yes, I was going to say unfortunately, but in lots of ways not unfortunately. But yes, it went from postnatal depression to clinical depression. It didn't go away.
And when you first realized that this, or you were first told by medical professionals and you were experiencing this depression, that this was a clinical issue that might be a lifelong issue, how did that impact you?
Well, my first reaction was I went to see a psychiatrist and they prescribed me with antidepressants and I came home and flushed them down the toilet.
Right.
That's how I reacted.
What would that be, like denial, I suppose?
Oh, just a little, yeah, big time denial. Yeah, that was not going to happen to me. It had happened almost overnight. It was like someone had taken out the normal Beth program out of my head and I was bubbly, happy, normal, average person, and then I woke up one morning and someone had put in this weird, strange person that was gloomy and all gloom and doom, and I cried all the time. I was depressed.
Right.
And so I felt if the onset was really quick, then maybe I'd wake up tomorrow morning and it was also gone.
Sort of snap out of it, and that was like a bad dream.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen.
No, unfortunately. No, it lingered on. Yeah.
So as you were dealing with this, now you come from a Christian background.
Yes, I do.
Was your first sort of inclination, I'm going to pray about it and then it's going to be okay?
Yes, I did do that. I certainly did go to God with it. In fact, I went to God on my knees and begged that, whatever it was that was afflicting me would go. The amazing thing about God in the midst of all this for me was that although God, for whatever reason, didn't choose to heal me, he sent tremendous help at many points in the journey. First instance was before I was actually diagnosed correctly. I remember I had 2 young children, 2 years old and a babe in arms, and I was just, it was just ghastly. It's hard to find the sufficient words to describe the all-encompassing feeling of just ghastliness.
Right.
And this particular day I was walking around the house and I was crying. I had Luke in my arms and he was crying and there was a knock at the door. I'm like, I can't face the world. This stage I wasn't going out. I was just not coping at all. And it was at the door was a lady from my church who had just been burdened by young mums in the church. She'd got a list from one of the pastors and I was first on the list.
Oh, wow.
She came to visit me. Long story short, she herself had suffered with depression many years before, recognised the same thing in me, and so what I'm trying to say is that was evidence of God sending help. She was amazing, Lois. God bless her cotton socks. I still see her at church and go, remember those days? Because that was evidence of God helping me and carrying carrying me through that awful time.
That's amazing. But in your book, so you have reliance on God as one of the principles in your book, but you have some other very practical tips, including, interestingly, I thought, because I had 2 bananas for breakfast this morning, eat bananas.
Yes, it's true. Diet is important in every facet of life. In depression, if that's something that you're suffering with, then it's certainly a good idea to look at your diet. Bananas, I believe, are high in potassium, which is very good for brain function in the area of mood. Right. So get some bananas into you. That's a really easy thing to do.
But there's still a stigma, isn't there, for those who take antidepressants? But you have very practical recommendations about that also in your book.
I do. I still take antidepressants. Let's be upfront about that. I've been on various different ones over the years. In the 25 years that I've had this illness, I've been on and off antidepressants. For some reason, there is this stigma with taking antidepressants that I'm going to have a go at going it alone. Right. And yet, if you were a diabetic or an asthmatic, for instance, and the doctor prescribed medication, you would take that medication faithfully because you knew you needed it. Right. Whereas there's something about having a mental illness like depression, anxiety, whatever, that, oh, well, I'm going to see if I can cope without it. Right. So off you go, regardless of what the doctor recommends. And in my experience, that hasn't been good.
That hasn't been the way to go. Do you think that there's a greater stigma within Christianity because of our sort of reliance on God and so forth, that we should somehow not have depression?
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a firm believer in that as a Christian we should experience joy. That doesn't necessarily mean happiness.
That's right.
For whatever reason, I have this problem. Sure. And I know a number of Christians do. But there have been even people in my family that have said to me, you have God in your life, you know, quoting scripture and verse to me, do not be anxious for anything, you know. So if you apply that in your life, you shouldn't be depressed. Well, I've seen God use this in me, and like many of our, you know, biblical examples, you know, Moses, you know, he told God he wasn't good enough. He couldn't go and be used by him. Even Paul had the thorn in his flesh or whatever that was.
Oh, Christ himself was described as a man of sorrow, acquainted with grief, and sorrowful even unto death. So
yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
So in a way, maybe we pick all the joy texts out. We never we don't focus on that our examples also has. You know, Beth, I want to thank you so much for your courage, because what you've done is, I think, put this issue squarely on the table. This is a fabulous little volume.
Oh, thanks.
It's colorful, it's easy to read, and really very practical tips. And if our viewers would like to get a copy of this, where can they get it? Okay, well, I have a website, a very simple website, and you can order it online, both here in Australia and internationally, and that is BethLouiseBarrett.com. And that's just right there on your screen, viewers. You can see it, so you can go just quickly write it down. Thank you. And Coorong stores are also stocking it. Yeah. So it shouldn't be any problem getting a hold of it. If you suffer from depression yourself, or if someone in your family suffers from depression, not unlikely, because in Australia 1 in 5 suffer from depression. Great little book. Obviously, seek medical advice as always. But this is a great way to sort of start thinking through this problem. And thank you so much, Beth, for your courage to stand up and also to share your experience with the rest of us. Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, some really great tips there, eh, Dora?
Yeah, it's a really practical book, and it's colourful and funky. I mean, why should depression be boring?
Well, Beth Barrett is certainly not boring. No. I did a quick web search before, and the BethLouiseBarrett.com website is still up and running. So, that's great. Good to see.
Oh, awesome. Okay, it's time for a quick break, but we'll be back in just a sec.
We live our lives running around, rarely stopping to ask ourselves where we're going and what our final destination is. In the end, our lives become little more than routine. Step beyond and discover a path that offers comfort, love and hope. Visit hopeoffer.com/step beyond or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Last year, the debate was reignited on an ancient tomb found at Talpio in Jerusalem, with the claim being made yet again that the bones it contained were those of Mary Magdalene and Jesus of Nazareth. Yes, Jesus.
So we asked our resident archaeology expert, Gary Webster, to come in and review the facts for us. Here's what he said.
Well, in 1980 in East Jerusalem, bulldozers uncovered a tomb. It's the sort of thing that happens all the time in Jerusalem. They called it the Talpiot tomb, but inside there were a whole bunch, about 9 stone boxes called ossuaries, which has caused a bit of controversy. You probably saw it in the news bulletin earlier. Here to help us out with this is the editor of Archaeological Diggings magazine, Gary Webster. How are you, Gary?
Good, Kent. Good to be with you.
Help us out. Stone boxes,
ossuaries. These ossuaries are bone boxes. Bodies decomposed, they gathered the bones and put them in these boxes.
Okay.
And what your viewers may not have realised is that with these boxes, the reason why they're so interesting in this tomb is that one of them has the name of Jesus on it, Jesus, son of Joseph, and one has the name of, they say, Mary Magdalene. All right?
Maria, I think.
Maria, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why, this must be the tomb of Jesus sort of thing.
So this is the family tomb of Jesus.
So they say.
So Jesus' bones are there, Mary's bones are there, Jesus' son Judah, and now they're saying Jesus' brother James, his box should have been in there as well. So as the Apostle Paul said, if the resurrection didn't happen, then our faith is in vain. So the stakes are pretty high here, aren't they?
Very high. Otherwise, Jesus is just a dead person.
Yeah.
But what is interesting is this. First of all, number one, the Jesus ossuary, the box with Jesus' name on, the son of Joseph part is pretty well right. But the Jesus is in big question. There are many differences of opinion as to what that name actually is.
So the letters are unclear?
The letters unclear, okay. The Mary Magdalene box, you see, there's no evidence for this. The name is Mariam Mara. Now, some scholars believe it's 2 names in actual fact. 2 women had their bones in this box.
Oh, yeah.
So this is
because
very
Mara was a woman's name.
Right, so this is very doubtful too. The 2 boxes that are the key linchpin for this theory are in very much question among scholars, and especially archaeologists.
Okay, it's interesting. So it's not just you saying that. There is actually a scholarly...
Absolutely. And the other thing is this, that the names, Jesus, Mary, Joseph and so on, these were very common names. We have heaps of names, about 29 names of Jesus in the 1st century, thereabouts, but from Josephus. So most scholars, most archaeologists do not go along with the idea that this is Jesus' tomb just because of the names. It's a very common line. Tom, Dick and Harry. Yeah. That's the sort of thing we're talking about. That's the other thing. I think the other thing too is they're trying to bring this James, brother of Jesus ossuary, because this was found back in the 70s, or came to light. We don't know where it came from.
But from a different location.
From a different location. Well, it just appeared on the antiquities market, and that's another thing.
Okay.
See, for archaeology, you need to find the thing in situ, in the place, right? But this just is on the antiquities market. No one knows where it came from. Anyway, it's got James, the brother of Jesus on. So these people are trying to connect that ossuary, found in the 70s, with this tomb, Talpiot tomb, okay? So if they can do that, hello, we've got another ossuary with James, brother of Jesus on it. Okay. So, but the problem with the James ossuary is this. James is certain, that name James is for sure, but the brother of Jesus is actually in another handwriting. So, and that's why it's believed this is a forgery, you see.
So the Israel Antiquities Authority actually said that.
Yeah, and even the man who owns the box, he says, well, it probably could be a forgery. It's just that I didn't forge the thing, okay? So the connecting the two is to try to get this thing moving further, but the box of James is in question. And the other thing, of course, with this latest find is this geologist, Shimon, says, you know, hey, look, the chemicals match with the James, the son of Jesus ossuary. It matches with the tomb, the Telpio tomb. So, hello, must be from there. But the problem is, he only used 15 samples, and there are 900 tombs in Jerusalem from this time, you know, from these ancient times, and you need a sample of 200 to 300. So scholars are they're not really taking this thing seriously.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see, Gary, if the peer-reviewed article actually comes out in this, because none has come out so far.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, thanks so much for helping us sort that out. You know, Dora, people have been puzzling over this for centuries, haven't they? I mean, did Jesus really rise from the dead, or didn't he? I mean, for me, I guess it's the make or break question of Christianity. Yeah,
there was even that movie that came out earlier this year, Risen, I think it was called, that looked at the same issue. Yeah, I really want to see that. But, you know, for me, I think it's important to go right back to the basics. Yeah. Why would the disciples make up something like that? I mean, it didn't get them any money. It certainly didn't get them any sort of political power. So, you know, why? Because all it produced for them was, what, floggings, imprisonment and execution for most of them. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. It's not proof, but it is evidence that they were telling the truth. It's hard to see how it makes sense any other way. Yeah. Hey, we'll take a quick ad break now, so stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Father, I can't connect the dots through the little that I understand. What words can I say to reach you? How can I know that you are there, listening, hearing, caring? My words are broken, weak, and powerless. But I know your power is limitless. What can I say?
Signs of the Times, a Christian view of the world. And this month in Signs, 50 years after John Lennon's infamous quote, "Is Christianity waning?" Imagine a world where we don't waste time eating food. The real story behind the legend of St. Patrick. The portent of the 4 blood moons of recent years. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Onions add great sweetness and flavour and a good base to any curry. Going to add some ginger, some garlic. Look at that, nice and chunky. So we've got our spices, gives it kind of a Sri Lankan feel. Add some tomatoes, tomato paste, some honey. Roasted vegetables in these kind of dishes are always great. But we add some creaminess to it. And that dish is now finished, ready to hit the table. I'd recommend you to give it a try, and it's so easy.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Atheist Richard Dawkins infamously described the God of the Old Testament as arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. What? Yeah, look, it may be a shocking thing to say, Dora, but a lot of people, even Christians, can resonate with it to a certain extent, I think. Wow, I guess, yeah, why does God let innocent people suffer is a big one. Exactly. Or how could a loving God burn people in hell forever? Well, that's right, and that is the topic of this next interview that we're going to see. I chatted a while back with the executive producer of the film Hell and Mr. Fudge. It's a pleasure to welcome to the studio Pat Arabito, the executive producer of a new film, Hell and Mr. Fudge, which is a lot more fun than it sounds. When did you complete this film, Pat?
We completed it in 2012, released it to DVD in 2013.
before we start, how about we just take a quick look at the trailer, and so people, you know, sort of have a feel for what the film's about.
Is he in hell? Is Davey in hell?
Do you remember? We had a date.
We are here today to refute the dangerous teachings of Edward Fudge.
You should all be ashamed.
We feel that now might be a good time for a change. Folks are partial to the truth that they've already got.
I am proud of you.
But one thing I do know, if the Bible says it, it's true. Even if the whole world is against it.
Now, Pat, hell is actually quite topical right now. I mean, in the last few years at least. Rob Bell, just a couple of years back, brought out his book, you know, Love Wins, in which he questioned the traditional view of hell. Then we had Francis Chan sort of come back with a, you know, a reply on, you know, sort of defending the traditional view of hell. Where does this film fit in with that?
Well, we think it's a good time to talk about hell because a lot of people are talking about it. And I would have to say that Hell and Mr. Fudge, you know, really doesn't speak to either of those views. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Edward Fudge, a real person. This movie retells his story of, when was it, the 1950s? All this
it took place in the 70s, early 80s.
70s, okay.
I mean, of course, his childhood in the 50s.
It starts in the 50s, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that, you know, the perspective that Edward Fudge came to is very rarely mentioned in any of the current literature that's out there, even though it's not an unknown view. And there are quite a number of scholars, you know, who have come to the same conclusions that Edward came to.
So Edward Fudge was a very talented and intelligent biblical researcher, very passionate about Bible research. And he was asked to explore, you know, what does the Bible really say about hell?
Exactly. He was hired by someone who wanted to know really what the real truth is, because there's lots of views out there. And this man wanted him to not only research Old and New Testament, he wanted him to go to intertestamental writers, early and late church fathers, Jewish historians. He wanted, you know, the widest possible research on the subject, which is what Edward did.
Yeah, and somehow, I mean, that's pretty heavy theological stuff, but somehow you've managed to weave that that very theological sort of, you know, in the head sort of story into something that's actually quite watchable. Was that a challenge?
It was a challenge. You know, it's a challenge to try to make a film out of something that's so cerebral. You know, it's an idea. We're doing a film about an idea, not an event. And that is a challenge. Was a challenge. Yeah. So the two basically competing views of hell that we see in this movie is basically the traditional view that when you die, if you've, you know, been bad or if you're not saved, I guess is, you know, more theologically correct, it's possible you'll end up in an eternally burning hell. Correct. The soul is immortal. You'll suffer forever. The other view that it seems that Edward Fudge came to through the movie, you know, it was difficult for him to do that, is quite different. Can you encapsulate that for us? Sure. You know, it doesn't say there's no fire, and it doesn't say there's no no penalty to sin. The conclusion that he came to is that it's a fire that burns up. It consumes rather than continues burning forever. So rather than God keeping a sinner alive so that they can suffer forever and ever and ever and ever, a sinner is completely annihilated. And that's what Edward came to, and that was really a, you know, very difficult conclusion for him to come to, but he couldn't avoid it by the time he got to the end of his research. Wow. And as audiences have watched this film who do have that traditional view of hell, has that been a very challenging thing for them, or have they found the movie objectionable or offensive in some way, that it questions that traditional view? It's such a good question, because for many people it's such a relief to realize that God doesn't do that. You know, that whole view of eternal torment has sent a lot of people completely away from God. You know, they've thrown it out because they can't equate the two. In fact, I had a woman who attended a theater showing of it, and she wrote a little note afterwards, and she said, I was raised in such and such a church where, even as a child, I couldn't understand how a God of love could torment people forever and ever and ever. And she said, you've confirmed my childhood beliefs, and I can hardly wait to tell my friends and family. She was thrilled. There are some other people who feel very protective of that view, and they feel like if we don't have the threat of eternal torment, how are we going to get people into church?
Wow, yeah.
So, you know, we've met with both views. I think the majority of responses that we've gotten have been positive and relieved to know that they don't have to believe that to believe in that God.
Is the point of a film like this to change people's minds, though, or is it to start a discussion?
It's more to start a discussion. You know, we don't give every reason. We don't give every Bible verse. We don't give everything that the Church Fathers said. You know, it's not a documentary. There's not a lot of heavy documentation in it. We really want people to just start questioning.
Wow.
And, you know, if they can just think, you know, does this fit? Is this possible that it's different? I'm totally happy with that.
Now, one thing you said to me before that I found a little bit strange. You said the character of Edward Fudge is very Christ-like. And I think, oh, wait a minute. You know, this man who is obsessed with his books, this man who's so obsessed with it that his wife ends up saying, oh, I'm going to my mum's until you finish sorting this out. How do you see the character of Edward Fudge as
That's
as
one
Christ-like?
reason we even use the story, you know, because really this story is about God and what God is like. And we want people to know that God's really good, not just says he's good. And Edward, in his daily relationships, he exhibited a Christ-likeness. You know, when his church fired him, he was so sweet about it, you know, and even in telling us the story, he said, I couldn't be angry at them. They've been so good to me.
Wow.
You know, when his wife accused him of being way too soft-hearted, you're willing to let things go too easily, he said, I can forgive. And he could. You know, he doesn't hold grudges against the people that were unkind to him back then. He just really exhibited a Christ-likeness that we loved.
Wow, that's cool. So, Pat, in Australia, what's the best way to get hold of Helen Mr. Fudge? Any tips?
At this point, the Adventist book centers will have it.
Okay. So that'll probably be through hopeshop.com. Those addresses are right there on your screen. Thanks so much, Pat. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
And thanks so much for this film.
Thank you. I hope it blesses many people here.
It's a fascinating topic, isn't it, Dora? And I guess, you know, one that has eternal implications when you think about it.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's why they took it on to make a film out of, because a theology movie, that's pretty hard to sell.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. And look, I'd have to say it's probably not the world's most amazing movie. It is, you know, quiet and thoughtful in places. But honestly, I did really connect with the characters. And I reckon they did a pretty good job of summarising the issues. But look, if you really want to get into it, though, you need to check out Edward Fudge's book, The Fire That Consumes.
Oh, reading theology? Probably not. I'm glad the movie's there, and the Bible, of course.
Oh, back to basics. Well, that's about it from us for this week. Thanks so much for your company.
All the best for the coming week. We'll see you next time. God bless.